Well, we can all be sure of two things. Number one, everyone is smarter than that guy. And number two, I am most definitely wearing trousers.
Trousers not detected.
Shut up, you. So in persuasive texts, our overview on page 244, in persuasive writing, the writer tries to persuade the reader or listener to accept his or her opinion or to act in a certain way. So persuasion is all about connection. It's all about connecting your ideas with your audience so that they can understand what you're talking about, and hopefully, if you've done your job correctly, they will agree that your point is valid and maybe overwrites what they think.
I don't really think.
To produce an effective piece of persuasive writing, the writer needs to use his or her vocabulary effectively and to understand the subject matter well. I would hope that that's always true, but in modern debates we can see increasingly that it is not. Now, I know America is the main target of this, but this, for instance, is an example of what passes for a debate in America.
There's no arguing it. Towson University's debate team wins, claiming an historic win.
They say the nigga's always already queer. That's exactly the point. It means that the impact is not, that is an impact turn to the that it is a case turn to the affirmative, because we are saying that queer bodies are not able to survive. That it necessarily means that the body of the nigga is not able to survive.
When the nigga sees these heathens suffering, that he can only envision himself, that he does not see another nigga, that he can feel.
What?
You can see the problem. The writer must also know who the target audience is and how to appeal to the audience's emotions.
I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned? Hang on a second. You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
well, then how did you see the hateful content?
Now, straight away, I disagree with this. A debate or an argument is always meant to find common intellectual ground. If we fail to find intellectual ground and instead we look for emotional ground, we're making a big mistake. You see, the human brain can only do one thing at a time. It can either think or it can feel. We have an intelligent brain and an emotional brain. We have a sophisticated human intelligence living on top of an animal instinct. And that's how the human brain is. Those two things don't really work together.
I hate my stupid psychotic brain.
You know this for a fact. You do this yourself. This is when you go to a restaurant and you know you should be eating the healthy option, but you order the least healthy option. This is when you're thirsty and you order a Coke instead of a bottle of water. We all do it. We all are often governed by what we want instead of what we know that we need. This is why I have a garage full of terrible motorcycles that don't work.
Because you're stupid.
We all do it. We're all governed by what we want rather than by what we need, because what we want is more attractive, it's more interesting, and it links up to our emotional needs to feel better about ourselves. We all buy into this and make that mistake at some point, and that's why this kind of marketing, advertising, or persuasion technique works so thoroughly, but it isn't the right way to do it. We should be finding common intellectual ground, not leading people by their emotions. Emotions are unreliable. If we allow emotions to control the way we feel and the way we think, we end up with a situation like this.
Many have their faces covered. Others are clearly smiling as they rush inside the store and start looting and causing damage.
It might start with an argument that you can't argue with, Black Lives Matter or trans rights are human rights. But then it expands beyond that because we're inviting people to feel, and those feelings run away with us. Obviously there's more to it than that, but we should never let ourselves be governed by feelings. This is why we have a legal system. This is why we have a court system with judges. These people are supposed to be sober and reasonable people who make firm intellectual judgments based on the evidence presented to them. This is why if a crime happens, we don't just allow people on the street to solve it for us. We have an entire organisation that deals with this in a fair and unbiased manner. This is because we know that emotional people can't make good choices.
Choices.
So these kind of adverts, these kind of promises, try and get an emotional response from you so that they can shut down your intellectual critical thinking capabilities, and you're more likely to agree with them without ever knowing that you've been coerced. The writer has to lead the audience to agree with his or her views by showing that the information has been interpreted in a logical way. Now, I agree with that.
That is quite logical, Captain.
It's easy to argue that there is no such thing as absolute fact. There isn't. There's The scientific method that we rely on today is based on the idea that we can reason things out. But reason is a flawed tool. To understand something wholly, we have to have all of the information, and it's not possible for us to have it. Everything that we know is based on a guess. And this shows up all the time with things like the search for dark matter, which only last week was proved to be complete nonsense. Dark matter now, we don't believe it exists. Scientists have been searching for that for years based on the premise that something is out there in space which is distorting gravitational waves, and we expected it to be a large amount of matter that we couldn't detect. Now we know that isn't true, because we're only basing our guesswork on the evidence we have. We never have all of the evidence, so we can never make absolutely objective, reasonable assumptions. We have to make a guess, and science is based on that. But the premise of science is that we're doing it on the best evidence we have, and we will change our mind when more evidence gets presented to us.
I don't believe in science.
The writer or speaker may also appeal to the audience's emotions to get them to agree with him or her. And this is when we start to lose our connection with the truth. We're appealing to your emotions. Now, remember, some things are never sold. We don't see adverts for water. We don't see adverts for fresh fruit. We know those things are good for us. We know we have to have water. We know we have to eat fruit and vegetables. You'll never see an advert on television saying, eat more fruit, eat more vegetables. It's never going to happen, because we know. We're always sold something that we don't need. And we're sold it because we have to generate want. Now, the way we sell it these days is very, very disconnected from the product. Now, here's an advert from a little while ago for a Ford car. Now, a Ford car it was a basic car. It was a basic machine. It was spelled K-A. It was a very basic model. It was no different to a small family car that we can get in this country. Nothing special about it. Then they made a slightly faster one, and they called it the dark Ford car, the evil twin. So this is the advert that tried to sell it. Now, you'll notice in this advert that nothing about the car has been spoken about. We've connected the comedy about the car being evil, therefore it must be faster and more exciting, but there's no mention of how much faster, what the car can actually do, what is it capable of, does it actually go around corners properly, because a small car like that probably wouldn't be able to handle very well. Nothing is actually told to us about the car. All we've got is an emotional connection to the product. We've got the name of the product, and then we've got something that makes us feel something. And that's all we've got. Now, this is used as an abstract advert. We're connecting the abstraction of the idea of the product with the name of the product. And this is something that we see very often. Now, McDonald's is one of the worst companies in the world for this. They started out marketing to children. Their original restaurants had hand puppets and colouring books, and they looked like they were set out for children, because they were attracting a younger audience. Now, as the people that grew up in those places got older, the restaurants became more mature, because they knew that they had to appeal to the same audience that they had captured with their early marketing. So what happened is they became more mature, knowing that these adults were already going to take their children into McDonald's. So McDonald's changed its style and its appeal to a more mature audience who have money to spend, who will take their children. So that's why their whole look changed. Now, this advert was purely abstract. There is no mention of burgers at all. If you didn't know what the McDonald's logo stood for, you would have no idea what they were selling. And even when you do, you really don't know what they're trying to give across. What message is this? We see all these people leaving their work. Are they going to burn down a McDonald's because it's a vile corporation selling unhealthy food to our children? We have no idea.
What is this?
And I don't think the marketing guys had much of an idea either. We see this a lot.
Oops.
So this is an abstract advert connecting the idea of everybody leaving because it's a fantastic product with the idea of the McDonald's logo. And we're trying to get the eyebrows as the McDonald's arches as well, to try and connect the idea of it to the idea of the product. Now, this is when these logos live rent-free in your brain. You think of McDonald's, you think of the logo. This is a very nasty piece of marketing, and it happens a lot. This is Coca-Cola. Now, in case you didn't know, Santa Claus was originally represented as being dressed in white and green. During the more seasonal periods, he was dressed in green, dressed like nature. Then in the winter, he would dress in white. And the original legend was that one would kill the other, and then it would be rebirth. The winter solstice was all about the rebirth of crops as they come back after being killed off by the winter. So we'd see Santa Claus dressed in white and green. The idea of Santa Claus being dressed in red was entirely 1950s Coca-Cola branding. And that has been so strong that it's now coloured our entire perception of what Santa Claus actually looks like. We never see him in movies or TV or in any kind of representation as being dressed in the original white and green. Now he's always represented as a man in red.
The world revolves at 1,000 miles per hour. Have you been here long?
Now this advert tries to connect the idea of a man dressed like a bottle of Guinness or a glass of Guinness to the idea of genius. Now how many beer drinkers who drink cheap Irish stout are actually very, very intelligent? And the answer is of course none of them. But this appeals to people's vanity in that, yeah, it's a genius idea to drink our product. Of course, it makes no sense, but they dressed a man in black, he had blonde hair, so he looked superficially like the product. So you're connecting the idea of him being very intelligent to the idea of drinking this product. And of course, there's no correlation. And again, in these adverts, we're not talking about what the product does for you, how it tastes, what it does, or even the dangers of it. All we're doing is connecting the idea with the product. And this is, again, very dangerous.
They're inside my head.
So the following are the objectives of different types of persuasive texts. Advertisements, to offer information to attract customers or supporters. I think we've done a good job of showing that that is not how it happens. We are not giving you information. It's rare that we see an advert that actually informs the audience of what we're talking about. Normally they're trying to promote an emotional connection rather than an intellectual one, and sometimes that's good. Here's part of an advert from New Zealand.
I know if I was going a bit slower.
Now this is trying to drive home the message that driving very fast is dangerous, because in New Zealand this is apparently a problem. It's a place with winding long roads where people allow themselves to drift up to higher speeds and accidents happen. Now this is connecting the emotional stress of being involved in an accident with your desire to drive faster. If we can connect the two, then people will slow down. So this is using the negative connotations of the emotional connection in a positive way, but that's very rare. Reviews, to offer an informed opinion. Now that's very, very rare. If you look at movie reviewers these days, they are very, very rarely informed individuals. One of the most successful review critics on the internet is the Critical Drinker, whose entire hook is that he's doing his reviews while drunk. This has no connection to the concept of an informed opinion. He's remotely amusing, although it fades very fast. This is just somebody making ridiculous videos for clicks, and that's where reviews are. Unfortunately, the whole review industry was destroyed by paid reviews. Once that came in, then no review is trustworthy anymore on either side of the balance. Challenge, to argue against a point of view. And that's fine if you're arguing against it intellectually. If somebody says the sky is green and you can point out the sky is blue, then fine, we've got an intellectual argument, we've got a challenge. But when somebody is saying the sky is green and you say, I don't agree with you because you've got bad hair, you're bald, I don't agree with bald people, then we've got a problem.
Brain scans. You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Discussions, to discuss both sides of the argument. I'm not really sure what the book is trying to get at here, but yes, discussion of any side should have both sides of the argument. We should be presenting both sides and let the audience choose for themselves. We should be treating people as if they're intelligent and informed individuals who are able to make their own mind up. The following are some types of persuasive writing. Now, most people don't read persuasive writing these days, but newspaper editorials, I don't think anybody reads newspaper editorials. Newspapers have almost disappeared. These days it would be websites. And again, websites are very, very unreliable because they are not held to any kind of journalistic standard. It used to be that journalists were investigators, knew they were going to offend their target, and they were people who really looked into the problem. These days, none of that happens. Newspapers are very unreliable, and they've died off because of it, but websites are probably far worse. Essays, very few people really read essays. It's a scientific thing. It happens in schools. Beyond that, these days, nobody reads them for fun. Advertisements, yeah, again, people read those, but they're usually presented visually these days because it's more effective. Humans are a visual animal. We don't often respond well to smells or sounds. We respond much better to our visual stimuli because that's how we see the world. We see it visually. Political speeches. Of course, politicians are in the job of trying to get you to agree with them. That's their job. But it doesn't always work.
I want to briefly speak about what's happening in Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank.
You look like you just woke up.
Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe.
Rest assured means deeply in. Make sure you hear that word. And clearly, it was in bold print on his teleprompter.
That's what passes for politics in America. And again, reviews, we've covered that twice. In order to appeal to the audience, writers and speakers may focus on the following. And again, I partly agree with the book on this. Need for safety and security. Well, one of the presidents of the United States said those who would give up their freedom for safety deserve neither. And he was absolutely right. You cannot give up your freedoms for safety and security.
Then just like that, it's all gone.
We all need to be grown adults. We all need to be self-reliant, responsible people who can take care of ourselves. Otherwise, we're simply not mature humans. Think of it as your dog or your cat, dogs especially. If you have a pet dog, your dog never achieves maturity. It never has to. It remains a puppy emotionally all of its life because you're always looking after it. It never has to go out and support itself. So it never really grows up. It's just a puppy all of its life, and without you, it can't possibly function. And if you allow other people to tell you that they're going to protect your safety and security, then you're really the same as your puppy. Sense of self-importance. Yes, we all like to think that we're important. If we're not important, if people don't believe they're important, then they start looking for simple pleasures. And one of them is consumerism. So we end up buying bigger cars, shinier jewelry. This is why people have iPhones, the latest iPhone, which usually doesn't do anything for you. People buy expensive stuff to feel better about themselves. Wouldn't it be a better world if we could measure ourselves by what we're capable of and what we've done, rather than by the things that we own?
Is fairly close to Buddhism.
Desire to be liked or loved. We all want to be liked or loved.
I hate everything!
Need to belong and fit in with others. Humans are a pack animal, unfortunately, and we do like to connect with other people. But yeah, they will often use that as a way to sell you on an idea.
Of course you want to be one of us!
Desire for excitement and fun. Yes, life can be boring. Desire to be rich. I've never understood that, but I know it's a big deal out here.
Oh, give me money, 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 money.
There's a line in a movie from a book. The things you own you. So when you have money, you really don't. You're just looking after it. Can't take it with you when you die.
The hell I can't!
A quote from Jesus was, "It's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than a rich man to pass into the kingdom of heaven." And this was a metaphor for how wealth changes a person. And you can see that very clearly with the extremely wealthy people of today.
They're terrible.
Desire for success. Well, it depends how you measure success. If we could all measure success as our ability to be happy, then this would be a very different world.
You're happy. I'm happy.
Desire to feel free and independent. And the desire to help others. Now, if you could take your ego out of the equation, if you were able to look at the world without your personal need to be better than everybody else, none of this would work on you. Adverts would fail, political speeches would fail, newspapers would fail, and we could ultimately work on getting together and fixing the problems in the world rather than a drive towards buying more products.
It's dreadful.
It's like communism.
But this works. The idea of the emotional connection and the abstraction towards the product identity unfortunately works. And it works in politics as well. It's all about product identity. Obama was a product. Trump is a product. Biden is a faulty product.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
But ultimately, it's all about linking the abstraction to the product, to the thing that we're trying to sell you.
Ah, Mountain Dew. That's not what I said. No? No? Yes. You're not very good at your job.
It's just, again, a way of connecting people to the abstraction. So ultimately, what we're trying to say here is that, yes, persuasion techniques should always be about intellectual connections. They should be about finding the best way to resolve a problem and then to establish that as your facts. These days that's become rare that we see that. It's not even taught in schools. American schools, as you see from the debate video.
Truly speaking, two niggas, but there's a question of who even wrote this shit.
People aren't taught to debate intellectually. They're just taught to make more and more noise. A lot of people think they've won the argument if they shout the loudest, and that is absolutely the opposite of what we should be believing. So unfortunately, a lot has changed since this book was written. We shouldn't be trying to sell emotionally, we should be trying to sell intellectually, and we should be trying to achieve that higher intellectual standard. That's what we should all be going for. Now, I hope you paid attention. There's going to be a quiz.
Oh no.